Don't touch my butthole. Welcome to Secretly Freaking Out, where everything is girly. Until we start talking.
No. No. I saw it happening. That's like when you wave to someone and you think it's waving to you, but they're waving to someone else.
Ooh. Do you see the thought process too? Like, I looked at you and I looked at it and I was like, yeah.
I'm Chany.
I'm Alia.
And we're best friends.
And I think, well, it's always relevant. But relevant to this episode, what are your pronouns?
My pronouns are they, them.
And my pronouns are she, they.
Nice.
The reason that we said girly is because we are both, or like, you consider yourself non-binary.
Yeah, we're both
I consider myself gender fluid.
Yeah, gender non-conforming folks.
Yes, and so that's one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and what it was like to grow up considered women, girls.
Yeah.
And how that impacted
considering
us.
myself 100% woman. That's a weird way to say it. But you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that I didn't have a name for the feelings that I had. So I also was just like, yeah, I'm a woman. And then now I'm like, oh.
Yeah, ditto. I watched Ace Ventura yesterday.
I've never seen it. I want you guys to know that this is not just for the podcast. This is quite literally something that happens every single time Chany and I hang out, which is they'll name something, some TV show or movie, or even like song or like thing they used to do as a kid, and I'll just go
pop culture reference from our younger years.
Yeah, and I'll just go, never saw it, never smelt it, never heard of it. Name that reference.
What?
I said name that reference. All of my references are internet videos. Yeah, what are you secretly freaking out about today?
Right. Secretly, I don't know. I did get my nails did. And they're nice and long. Longest I've had so far. Yeah, secretly freaking out that these are the longest nails I've ever gotten, that I will fuck my nails up. That I will forget.
That's valid. And
like rip a nail out. So I'm secretly freaking out about that. Additionally, it's Black Friday, and my packages are starting to come in from my unnecessary spending. Listen, it's a bad season, all right? We haven't seen the sun in weeks at this point.
Nope.
And
it's getting colder by the day.
Oh, and I do not handle anything but summer and like late spring well. So I definitely think that some of my struggles, my mental health struggles, my mood struggles, and my coping mechanisms are coming out in full force. And one of those things happens to be
spending money.
I love shopping, but not in person because that's stressful. I have a package downstairs right now. I'm pretty stoked to go get it. So yeah, I would say that I'm also secretly freaking out about that. My like inner gremlin is like about all the things that are coming in. So many colorful.
It's like Christmas every day.
Yes. So many colorful palettes. So what are you secretly freaking out about?
I just have one, I think, although who knows, I'll start talking and name 1,000 things. But it's actually a positive one that's not going to sound positive at first. But, so I've been starting to go gray for the last couple of years. Like, I've started to get it started tiny little hairs in my temples.
So quaint.
Yeah, little guys.
Been gray since 20.
Yeah, but it started small, and it started, not even, the weirdest thing, and my mom said it was the same thing with her, it wasn't even the roots, it was the ends of hair. So it would be like white, I guess it grew in white, and then it would start growing in black, so it was
the
like...
pigment would come back.
Yeah, weird as fuck, which is why I think it's stress related. But that being said, I love it because I think being salt and peppered and like gray hair is one of the sexiest things ever. And I know that's crazy. Most people, and I think when it first started happening, I was like, oh, I'm having an existential crisis. Like I'm graying at like 25 or whatever. Now, several years later, I can't wait. I can't wait until I've got a full salt and pepper. And both my sister, I don't know about the older one, but the middle one, she's already like, she's fully salt and peppered. She's got like gray all the way through her hair and stuff. And like, that's just the deal with that. So I can't wait. I actually think it's one of the sexiest things ever. And also, I have black hair. I am very averse to bleach. I tried bleaching my hair a bunch when I was a kid. I did 2 strands, and like because I want long hair, it just financially wasn't feasible to like keep up with the treatments to keep your hair healthy. Yeah. So my dream since I was a kid has always been to have bright blue hair. Well, dark blue, but like blue hair. I tried it several times. I've actually been to a hair salon multiple times when I was a teenager in the early 20s to get them to try and be able to do it without like bleaching too hard with just like lifting. It didn't work. So if I go gray, I get blue hair.
All the sooner, baby. So stress, it's good for something. Just kidding. We don't condone that message.
We don't condone stress. No. Stress. Don't be stressed.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised that you are not more gray, given, like, no offense, but how stressed you are all the time, the entirety of our relationship. Literally. You've been fucking stressed, and I'm not just saying you're a stressy person. Like, I know I am I stress about things that don't exist.
Yeah.
And I have people in my family who are stressy, like, about things that, you know, they, like, diagnosed anxiety and depression. And I'm not saying, yeah, of course, but I'm saying you have things that happen in your life that are fucking stressful that you have to navigate and have had from the time that I knew you.
Yeah, I haven't even told you about the most recent, like, fucking
fucked up work environments,
health problems, mental health problems, fucking...
Wait, I'm not up to date?
Living situation. No, there's just, like, a new health thing that I need to update you on. As of this week, literally every single time I see Chany, there's a new problem in my life.
I should be your biographer.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, who else is going to keep track of all this?
Yeah, not me.
No, it turns into a blur after a while, right? Like, when so many things happen, you're like, do you remember last year when I was hitting crisis and I was like, I don't really remember. And you were like, no, this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then, oh, right, we forgot about this, this, and this. And I was like,
oh, what?
Wow,
I've been living through a lot. No, yeah, literally. And it's funny because, like, I have had... worst 2 years of my life in the last 2 years. And so, like, the most things have been happening in the last 2 years. But it's sad because I was saying this to someone else. I was like, I have always been an extremely anxious person. I've always been an overthinker, stressed, neurotic, whatever the fuck you want to call it. That being said, I have never been this consistently daily stressed in my life. Like, now when the smallest thing happens, like, just like literally I came into Chany's apartment today and I'm like, here are all the 5,000 things I need to do before we start filming, and and then we have to get this and we have to buy tickets for this and because now when the smallest thing happens, my cortisol levels are just literally through the roof. They're constantly
they're always way too high, so anything like, and it's overactive, right? Your immune system and your stress response system becomes overstimulated, but also then like oversensitized.
Yeah, so anyway, but the positive is that I'm graying, and most people have existential crises when they're graying, but I did initially, and now I'm actually really excited about it. I love salt and pepper hair. I think it's cute. So hot. I think it's so sexy. So that's what I'm secretly freaking out about today. Also, I'm going blind. We have 3 lights set up, and every time I blink, I can see like 3 little fucking squares in my eyes. You're half a blurred line at this point.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello.
Anyway.
That's really cool, dude. I'm really glad that you're not
sad about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really actually interesting sort of segue into one of the things that we majorly wanted to talk about today, because if you noticed from our intro, we talked about things being girly until you take a closer look or until we start to talk. And I think one of the major societal pressures on women and femme folks and femme presenting folks is this pressure to not age versus more masc presenting folks. Like, you know, you get called like a silver fox and you're all hot and heavy as men age. And I will give you that men get in general like more grounded into their attractiveness as they get older in some ways. Like, I would say And I also, can I just name, I think as feminized folks, we are taught, and this came about from a post that I put on my Instagram story recently, and it was the actor who played Superman in Smallville. And it was this meme that was like, when you're told that this is what high school boys will look like, I think as femme folks, we are really conditioned to see older men, because these people were
100%.
like 20 something, 30 something, conditioned to consider older men more attractive. And so your brain is already kind of co-opted into finding folks who are 10, 12 years your senior attractive at that age. And so your tastes evolve, I think, quicker.
Yes. Also, like, if you think about like societal expectations on like just in the most simplest terms, men versus women, although we know that like those two concepts are much more complex than I'm naming them right now. I think femme folks and women are raised to, you know, go towards that home life, that biological, have kids, get married, whereas men are probably, and this is a very, very basic explanation on it. This is like the old school, whatever, but generally it still stands to a certain degree. Whereas like men are more encouraged to like go out, sow their wild oats, explore, adventure, and then settle down with someone. And so I think that the effect that has on like folks like us is that we're always looking for the partner that's going to be able to provide that even at a young age. Yeah. Whereas men are kind of like looking for the youngest, hottest thing on the block.
And it's just, it's a confounding, traumatic, complex experience that I think has lots of lows and some bunnies. I won't say a whole lot of highs when you aren't given the option to think more expansively about how you want to identify, because I think that just makes it a really long, tedious fucking journey to figure it out when you could have just had that from the get-go. But so I don't want to be like, there's lots of highs to it. But I will say, like, in coming to terms with like who you really are and coming to accept that, there's a lot of fun in that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hard aspects to it too.
True. A lot of heartbreak, a lot of grief, a lot of confusion, a lot of gaslighting yourself, a lot of like all that stuff. I will also throw out two more disclaimers. One, we're not raised as men. We don't necessarily consider ourselves men. We don't actually know what the lived man experience is. We're going to be talking about our experiences from the raised as women or perceived as women experience. And so like this is
female at birth.
Yeah, AFAB. So like we're not going to, you know, we're probably going to shit on men a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just going to,
and this comes from the lived experience of being an AFAB individual or a femme presenting person interacting with men, because both of us have dated, been attracted to, in deep love with, current some form of like relational care with men.
Yes. And so we're probably going to shit on men a lot, but that's not to take away your lived experience, and that's not to say that like we're just, you know, you got yours and this episode is about ours.
Yeah.
So no hate,
that's the whole reason that
all love.
Here. We're talking about what we want to talk about.
So like no hate, all love, don't get offended. But we have these feelings. The other thing that I was going to say,
and most of the guys that we've interacted with and that we're like referencing in terms of our lived experiences are identify as cis men.
Yeah, cis men, shitheads too.
Yeah.
Both. I'm not saying those go hand in hand.
I feel like they're, and maybe one of the other identities that they might like claim and is womanizers.
A fook boy, you might say.
As one says in local language.
The other disclaimer I was going to put out there is that, and I think this is something you and I are constantly coming across, is that, you know, we're going to talk about our experiences coming to terms with gender identity, sexuality, whatever it might be, our experiences. But like those things in themselves are so incredibly fluid. Chany and I are coming to new realizations about our identities, how we relate to the past identities we've had, how we feel going forward constantly. And those thoughts and feelings are ever changing. And so what we say today, we might not feel a year from now, whatever. And I think that's the fun in being able, also just for us personally, to be able to look back and be like, I thought that? Well, I think this now.
I'm a dumb fuck.
I wish I thought like that again, because that's happened to me before. Remember?
Yeah. Whole thing around confidence and things like that. Yeah, I will say, I think we're a little bit too rigid and harsh with how folks, like, in the modern understanding of gender and where it's at currently, I think that there isn't an adoption or enough conversation around gender expression, gender identity, and exploration being fluid the way that so many other aspects of ourselves are. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not really attached to my pronouns, gender expression, gender identity staying the same long term. I think that that's unrealistic to expect
100%.
To a certain degree. There are some folks who feel really grounded, really clear, really...
Oh, and that's super valid. Yeah.
And I'm constantly changing. And let's just be real. I'm constantly aging. And with age brings a certain extent of newfound wisdom, and I'm excited for that. So it might be a disclaimer, but I also just want to say, it's also part of the most joyful aspect, I think, about 100%. This journey. And I don't want it to be oh, we're the minority. I think I really want to...
Oh, no, that's what I meant. Yeah.
It's just... I don't hear enough people talking about it in a way that's really normalized, and so I kind of wanted to add that normalizing of it, because if your fashion sense is still the same as it was when you were a teenager,
check yourself. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that's why I said the disclaimer, because I just feel like it's a really important thing to acknowledge that, I think people hold themselves to a singular identity way too often. I think what's beautiful about self-exploration is shit, man, I have a different color now every couple of months. I used to be blue, 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 blue. I love blue. I love turquoise. I love blue. And now I'm sometimes it's purple. Sometimes it's green. I listen to different genres of music. I change my style every few months. Why not my inner identity too?
How you style your hair, the clothes that feel most happy on your body.
The people that you want around you, your favorite foods, your interests.
Yeah.
Your humor, everything.
I don't think that there's anything about me that stays consistent besides my ability to struggle with distraction.
And my mental health.
Yeah. But even that's not consistent, right? It's I'm high, I'm low, I'm... What?
I don't even know today. I think one of the... So, for me, the process of coming to terms with being gender fluid was obviously a long one, as it was for you, I think, too. One of the nicest things I think someone said to me when I first started voicing that, I was I think I have something else going on. I don't know. And, frankly, I'm going to be super honest about, the other fluidity part is that I didn't really even understand what it meant to be non-binary for a long time. I was I don't really get it, but I respect it. Everyone else is them. But it's so crazy to go from that to then be oh, that actually applies to my life and me. But one of the nicest things someone said to me was that I was I think that I might be entertaining the concept of using using they them pronouns every now and then. And they were yeah, man. And today you use they, them, maybe in 6 months you go back to she, her, maybe you switch to he. They were you're allowed to figure this out. You're allowed to take your time, switch it around, test out what feels best for you, what lands, what doesn't, what feels good in your heart and your soul. And if you go down this path and you come back being actually, I thought about it and I really do feel aligned with my woman self and I feel truly a woman, then that's okay. And lo and behold, that wasn't the case. Yeah. But it was normalized for me that was okay to kind of play and see.
Yeah, I got much the same. I had a big hold up around this. I think that there's this narrative perspective around gender and gender nonconforming identities stemming, we see so many of the stories being told in traumatic lights. So I didn't have that trauma. I didn't have that rejection. I didn't have being so sure or so uncomfortable in my lived experience that I couldn't exist within it. And so that sort of those stories that we see, especially of younger folks, being sort of bullied, hurt deeply, rejected from the people that love them, and that being a massive part of their journey into queerness, into gender nonconforming, into transness, whatever it might be. And I didn't have that, and it took a really long time for me to feel like it was okay to take up enough space to explore it within myself, because I didn't have all these pre-existing what I thought it was I didn't have all these pre-existing experiences of trauma around being gender nonconforming or being queer. As soon as I gave myself space, I was oh, that's there. I just didn't. I couldn't look at it because I was already dealing with so much stuff, to recognize that there was trauma there. You know, that I was very much clocked into a space that didn't feel good. And in trying to figure out my sexuality and trying to figure out how I felt uncomfortable and that I didn't fit in, and how I was trying to express myself within the confines, that there was like shitty feedback. Or was it like, I hate comparing traumas, but like I want to be honest that it wasn't, you know, the worst experiences I've heard and seen from some of the people I love most in my life going through on their journey, but it wasn't nothing. And it took me being brave enough to like tell people that I was curious enough about this, and then getting the love and the space
and the acceptance
to step into it more and feel like I wasn't taking someone else's spot. And I think it was really huge to realize that like queerness isn't a zero-sum equation. Like, it's not a finite resource. That you're, by existing as a queer person, you're not taking up someone else's space that they don't get to have. Like, there is enough space and freedom and liberty and liberation. Liberty. I don't know if I've ever said that word. Liberty. Liberation is what I mean. For us all.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's funny just because, like, I don't know if I had, I think I was very lucky. I don't know if I had trauma in being raised as a woman, or being perceived as a woman for the majority of my life. I don't know if I had trauma because I think I was very lucky to be accepted as having masculine traits and like having, you know, lovingly being called like the tomboy or whatever, which some people have a real issue with because they're like, that's a rejection of my true identity. But I was like, I kind of, you know, for me, it was nice that I think there was a recognizing from a lot of people around me that and this is a problem because there is an ideal feminine person and I wasn't perceived as that, which is a problem. But I'm just naming that, like, this would be a problem for a lot of people. I think I was lucky to not look back on those experiences and feel quite upset by them. I was like, it actually feels like there was room for me. But I think the piece for me that was, and don't get me wrong, I have my issues with having been perceived as a woman for the majority of my life and still to this day. We'll get into like how I feel about my gender fluidity, but I do use she first. But I think for me, when I started first learning from my own perspective about being non-binary, gender fluid, gender nonconforming, whatever it might be, and we had this conversation where I was like, you know, I did a bunch of research and I kept seeing videos of people being like, well, you have to have body dysmorphia. No.
Yep.
Body dysphoria. Gender dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria,
Thank
body
you.
dysmorphia.
Yes. The two of them. People were like, you have to be uncomfortable with a certain part of your body. You have to, you know, and I think, first of all, saying the phrase have to in any context is really sad because it boxes.
It's also fundamentally untrue.
And it also boxes you in, like, being queerness is about being queerness. Being queerness! Being queer is about being fluid, right? So I think that in itself is harmful to the community. That's just my own opinion. Because it just boxes you in. So people were like, you gotta hate part of your body, or you gotta hate part of your gender. And I was like, but I love my gender. I love my gender, and I feel like there's more to it. Not more in a quality kind of way, but more in a quantity kind of way. I was like, I love being a woman, and there's something that's been there my entire life. And it was a sibling, my sister, who I was sharing this with, and she's also queer. And she turned to me and she was just like, you know, I think that narrative can be harmful in a lot of ways because it suggests that there needs to be something wrong with you to be queer. And I was like, woof, smacked in the face with reality, where I was like, that's so true. And she was like, it goes a step further, talking about gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia. That suggests even higher level of there has to be something medically wrong with you to be queer, which is fucked up in itself. And also, queerness does not have to be the lack of something, which I think is, like you talking about, like there wasn't a lot of trauma initially that you had kind of uncovered. And I think that's kind of the beautiful thing, is that initially you did uncover it eventually, but initially it is that concept of like, there doesn't have to be something wrong for you to enter into your full identity.
Well, I think, and that's what the magic that we see when folks at a young age are allowed to explore, are allowed to experiment with pronouns, are allowed to wear what they want to wear, are allowed to question what gender has to do with genitals and sexual, and just be able to ask those questions and think on it at an early age. We bypass all. We give them the opportunity to bypass a huge chunk of where the trauma comes from, which isn't just from childhood and being forced into a set space, but actually like adolescence and stuff too. Like a lot of my trauma came from adolescence and from early 20s. Like when you talk about being called a tomboy, I got called a tomboy and it was like cool for you. The men that I dated who called me that didn't say it in a nice way.
No.
They were like, man, you're the first tomboy I've ever dated. It's weird dating a tomboy. Okay, thank you for othering me. And also, I don't even feel like that fits me because in my expression as a tomboy, I was still performing something that I was viscerally uncomfortable with.
And I think, I don't know if this is true, I'm just posing food for thought. Because I know you and I have a similar lived experience with trying to attain that hyper feminized, perfect woman in society kind of thing, whether it was sexually or the way we presented ourselves or whatever, how we dated. And I think maybe I'm wondering if for you, it felt like a negative experience because they were essentially saying that the efforts you were putting towards that were null and void because it's you're trying to be a woman in that sense of the word.
Well, it's also I have to do that 24/7.
You can't just make any room.
I don't have that 24/7. That is so much stress and effort and trying and feeling
pressure.
Uncomfortable that oh, God forbid I put on a baggy pair of pants or a snapback and now I'm the tomboy again, and it just erased all that effort. And here's the crazy thing is now that I'm comfortable in my queerness, comfortable in being gender nonconforming, I am incredibly fluid in my gender expression. Summertime I feel high in femininity. I feel skirts, skin, I don't wear a bra, and I'm I love my titties, and it just made no room for me. It made no room for how I was expressing myself and how I felt about myself, and as I'm healing womanness, my relationship to womanness feels more queer and a lot less harmful now than it did even a year ago because I'm healing my relationship to it, because I have the space to move away from it and redefine it for myself. And that's beautiful. And I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't allowed myself the time to leave that identity, leave that reference point behind for a long time and step away fully from it. I wanted to name that, and I also wanted to name languaging about how you have to be one thing and you have to experience another. That is, I find, and I'm not saying wrong in that it's statistically factually wrong, which we've already sort of talked about. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I think it is wrong morally to do that because whatever it is you are defining it by is limited by your understanding of the world, is limited by the amount of healing and self-love and care that you've done, and also deconditioning and learning that you've done about your fellow community. We are still living in a society that is deeply, deeply troubled and deeply problematic, deeply oppressive for so many of us in our various identities, and it's going to take lifetimes to undo that. Yeah. So for you to say that queerness is any one thing that it has to be defined by, is that going to be true? Is it even true now? Is it going to be true tomorrow? And is it going to be true in 20 years when we've expanded past our understanding of it today? Who knows? And so I just don't that.
That's the other thing. I just hate the rigidness. I don't want to speak too much to the trans experience because it's not my experience, and I frankly don't have a lot of I have a general understanding of what folks like that go through just from listening to voices talk about it, but I obviously don't know from any personal experience, nor do I have any trans folks personally in my life. That being said, so I don't want to take up space in a conversation around that, but it really breaks my heart that people who detransition are so villainized and ostracized from the queer community, because I think detransitioning is a very valid thing, and I don't think that means that their identity was ever invalid.
No, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Listen, if we can shave our heads and get tattoos and get Botox and filler and
get married, get divorced, get literally anything.
Why can't folks try something, whether it's like whatever sort of medical transition that they've made or non-medical transition that they've made, if they then reverse that, and
that's their journey.
Yeah, exactly. And it also doesn't mean that time period and that
is just null and void now. Yeah,
no, it might just be that they were like, this worked for me and now it does not work for me, and I prefer not to have breasts. Or I prefer to have, whatever. Or I'd like to be
perceived as, the first, whatever gender I was prior to this. Or I actually prefer that lived experience.
And that's assuming that whatever medical, non-medical transitions they made are attached to that gender.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which might not be.
Yeah.
I don't consider boobs being a woman thing because I don't identify as being a woman still. I'm coming closer to being in a healed place with my woman. But I would not. I identify as non-binary.
Yeah,
and I got titties. What you trying to say? What you trying to say?
You got nice titties too.
Are you talking about my boobs? You saying I have nice titties? Yeah. Thank you. I like them
and a cute butt too.
Yeah, I was just making this joke earlier. I was like, I don't gain weight. I gain ass and titties. It is true that when I put on weight, that's the first place: ass, titties, and tummy.
Ideal. I know, right? Yeah. Modifications to your body don't necessarily have to. Medical transitions, non-medical transitions, whatever it is, self-expression is valid. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't always have to mean something so profound or mean that you are now boxed into that new form of self-expression.
And if it does mean something super profound, that doesn't mean that the profoundness of it is now null and void simply because you find profound meaning in new things or in changing it again.
Yep.
Oh, I'm so glad you named that because I think it's always sat in a funky place when people get on and it's this is unsuccessful or this was a mistake.
Yes.
They were never this gender, and I'm like, that's not a choice that anybody should be forced in. It's either that you were trans and now you're not, or you're trans and you don't do anything even if you now feel uncomfortable in your body. I'm like, that feels really limiting and restrictive and not at all
it's
expansive
it's just ripping away someone's identity just because it's different now.
And what if you don't fit into that? What if you're I feel neither of those things? Well, now you're being totally, again, oppressed for your unique, fluid individuality, which is what queerness is all about. And what I believe transness is all about is I think that our society just has a long way to go in just letting people fucking live their lives and loving them through it and being cool.
Yeah.
You doing okay?
Yeah.
Great.
You happy?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
It ain't that hard, y'all. It ain't that hard. What do you need healing? What do you need to look at in order to be able to love people as they are where they're at? The other, the reason why this conversation started too is the other day we were talking about, God, how did we start it? Being a Manic Pixie Dreamgirl and being specifically being... Go.
I want to talk about this, but at some point I really do want to talk about how I relate to my own gender. And I want you to talk
you can
about
do that now.
Oh.
I ain't worried about it.
I cut you off. I do this to Chany literally all the time. They're halfway through a thought and I'm like... Blah, 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 blah.
Shut your hormones. I have something more important to say.
And then Chany does it too, but in the opposite sense where it's you don't think it's important, your brain's just boop boop. I'll be yeah, okay, so we have to do this thing, and they're like, you want to play my dog?
Yes. ADHD.
Neurodivergence, which brings us to that. But real quick, I just wanted to talk about or I think it would be really interesting for folks to hear how you identify, what it means to identify as non-binary for you, how you've related to your gender identity, your previous one, because I find so much comfort in that, in expressing and learning from others how they relate to their genders in a non-boxy way.
Okay, sorry about that. We need to do the dog break. Dog break. There will be noises in the background, but hopefully not too disruptive. There might be some stop starting, but
it's okay. Our mic's stuck anyway.
Yeah, this is a low budget.
Yeah, if you guys want to send us some money so we can buy better mics, that'd be nice.
That'd be nice.
And by you guys, I mean the two people who watch this podcast, being Alana And
no, I'm not gonna add. That's not.
Oh no, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't.
No.
That was a separate joke. That was a separate joke, being like, we have 2 consistent watchers, and it's like Alana and maybe Buffalo Beauty Boy.
Maybe.
Shout out, follow them.
Yeah. So you were asking me my gender identity, explaining it. To be honest with you, it changes. I think a major thing for me was that I didn't feel comfortable identifying as a woman. I never felt like it fit me. I never felt like I fit into it unless I was trying way too hard. And it just didn't feel good. Like, it's never felt good. I never really felt like I had a place. I always felt like I was performing. And I was like, how does one, And I think for a really long time I had been pushed towards things that felt, in one aspect, like more easeful in terms of like sexiness or whatever, but like really didn't feel great. And so I think when I finally felt good naming that I was non-binary, it just felt like a weight off my shoulders. It really felt like I was officially denouncing trying to make myself something that I wasn't, and that didn't feel good, and that I didn't feel good trying to fit into all the time, because it just wasn't me. And non-binary had enough spaciousness in it, enough possibility, that it did feel like I could fit in there. It did feel like all of me could belong in that identity in a way that being called a woman felt limiting. And I still feel that, mind you. I think my relationships to womanhood, womanness, being a woman, what have you, has changed. But I still feel like all of me.
It was a cold draft, sorry. Just smacked me in the face.
Smack. I don't, that's weird. I was like in the zone.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. You're this huge, emotional, beautiful fucking thing.
No, I'm like on a roll right now. And then, okay, anyways, that being said. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's funny. I think it's very, very funny that just happened, because that's a very me moment. Squirrel. Squirrel. Oh my god. A breeze. That's actually what just happened.
Nothing solid.
I don't
air.
Everything that's around us all the time.
Oh, I thought it was gonna hurt him. He's unfazed. Did you see that? He was just like, my guy. My little guy.
Such a cute, sweet. My blind dog knocked over one of our.
And it fully just like flopped. I thank God it's not heavy, but it like flopped over him. He didn't even. He was just like,
huh? Anyway, it's because like he's had us trip on him here. Well, that brings that to an end. Like, no, it's fine. Fuck everyone. I'm done. Crash. Okay, you tell me now.
Just a blind dog.
Yeah, he just got groomed.
Yeah, sorry, man. You were saying some real beautiful shit. If you look at the footage before that, I was just smiling at you.
Like, until you were like,
look at them go. Oh, it's cold on my face.
Air interacted with my skin. Stupid. You're not stupid. It was just stupid.
It's so
Go ahead. Oh, is it hard for you to concentrate on describing your gender identity when I'm being dumb? Too bad.
Anyway, I gender fluid.
Go on.
I think it's funny. I think initially, like, the first term that I learned about was not learned about, because I knew about these concepts prior, but like first term that I ever kind of thought about was being non-binary, and I was like, oh yeah, like it makes sense. And then, another thing that I hate, not only the whole, like, it has to be gender dysphoria or body dysmorphia or whatever it is. The other thing that I hate is that, like, being non-binary is neither. Like that box that people put non-binary people in, where they're like, you can't be a woman nor a man.
So non-binary is here.
Right here in the middle. It's like, no, everything is fluid. I hate that. And so I think initially I had an aversion to that because it didn't, and I don't think that's what being non-binary is anymore, for the record, but this is like training wheels, Alia trying to figure it out and like do research and understand. So initially I had an aversion to that because I was like, that's really not what I feel. I feel so connected to my womanhood. I just also feel like there's just been this other piece of me or these other parts of me that I haven't really had names for my entire life. And like, eventually, like through exploration, I think I started playing with the pronouns, was identifying as non-binary for a while, and then landed on gender fluid, because I realized, even in talking to people about it, I remember one of the first things, I didn't know if I was like, I don't know, is this something that everyone feels? Is this something that, all this stuff? And I talked to a sister of mine, who is not queer, and, I said to her, I was like, sometimes I since I was a little kid, I've walked down the street and I think I'm a man. And she goes, I've never felt that in my life. And I was like, okay, validating. Okay, good to know. And then, yeah, it's just, for me, it's like it's pockets of time, it's moments in which suddenly I do not feel like a woman. Yeah. And it's not short. I'm not saying it's like a second here or there. It's just these like moments in time, days or weeks at a time, or even hours at a time. Like, it's just this constantly evolving thing where there are certain energies within me. And I really do associate it with the term energies. Like, I'm like, sometimes it's a very feminine, attached to my womanhood kind of energy. And then sometimes it's not, it's a more masculine energy. And this is like how I am. And I think one of the first things that I remember thinking was that, like, I was like, I think we had this conversation where I was like, how would I feel if I was walking down the street and somebody called me he? And I was like, I'd fucking love it. But like, not because I identify with being a man necessarily, just because like it would be some sort of encapsulation of part of the energy within me. And I was like, even if I'm like hyper feminine that day, if someone was like, oh yeah, he, that guy over there, I'd be like,
the one time my brother accidentally used he, him pronouns for me, which I don't know where it came from, but I was like, universe, I see you watching out. But the one time he used he, him pronouns for me, I was like,
yeah.
I really resonate with you, with what you just said. Not because I identify with necessarily being a man, but it does speak to something that exists within me that I'm like, oh, you're seeing a part of me.
Yes.
You see a part of me that is gone unseen, unnamed, and it just feels good.
It feels good. It feels validating. It feels like
luscious.
Yes, that's a part of who I am. And like, even just people using the they pronoun for me, I know it's my secondary pronoun, but like when people, like when you and your partner say they for me every now and then, like it hits my ear. Like when someone else, like my old roommate, again, I'm not saying, I say this every episode, I'm not saying names of the, you get it. I'm not saying names on the podcast. My old roommate.
Private life.
Internet is not safe.
We're baby.
Anyways, my old roommate once threw it in like a couple of times where she was like, blah, blah, and then I was saying to this person, they, da, and like, I was like, ding, ding, ding. And like the first time you said it, I remember like you were describing a moment where you were talking to your partner about me, and you in retelling the story, you were like, da, da, and then I was like, they, blah, blah, blah. And I stopped you. I was like, did you just say they? And you were like, yeah. And I was like, it happened. It happened. So anyway, I just think that like there's always been this energy to me. There's always been this like this piece of myself that, and again, I always say more or not just a woman. I don't mean that in a quality kind of way. It's not like being just a woman is a bad thing. There's just been more complex feelings inside of me. And so then coming to the term of gender fluid, I was like, yeah, man, like sometimes I do walk down the street and I think I'm a man. And I've felt that since I was like 10 years old. Like that's been a thing. Like I was always trying to be the boy in like the games we played as a kid. I always wanted to be the boyfriend. I always wanted to dress in men's clothing. I've always dressed in men's clothing since I was a kid. Like, and I know these things sound superficial, but they are the superficial aspects that led to a deeper understanding of what was going on the inside.
Yeah, they were the outside indicators of what you felt internally, what you knew to be true internally.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on that we both have this lived experience of is like, this is maybe not where I don't think I experienced much trauma as being perceived as a woman, but I experienced so much conflict and discomfort within myself, was not knowing how to quite literally physically express. Like you and I both went through phases in our lives where we're like hyper sexualized, feminized. Like I was wearing heels and dresses and skirts and like basically trying to take my identity from every woman around me.
Yeah.
And like also
you were literally copycatting,
and also in trying to fit into that concept of being a woman, I would judge other women who weren't gender conforming. I would be like, that's really mean. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm just saying, like, this is the unlearning and the undoing of a lot of the trauma or, like, confusion or whatever you want to call it that came with being perceived as a woman my entire life. I was like, you're not, look at me, like, I'm so hyper feminine and da-da-da.
Look at how much I've done. You need to step up.
And I think it was a jealousy thing. Like, I think secretly on the inside, I was like, I want to be like you, but I'm trying to be something that I'm not, and I'm jealous.
And how dare you? How
dare you be what I want to be?
Back to when you hear queer and trans folk talk, queep and twump folk talk, it's about, like, the hatred that you are throwing at me comes from something that you have already oppressed within yourself, that you have already told yourself you don't get to have, you don't get to love, you don't get to be loved, and you will not let exist, you will not give space to, and so you cannot stand seeing me. And I think that's really sad. Does it mean that I don't lose my absolute ever-loving shit when I see people being really transphobic? I don't even like the word transphobic because it implies that they're afraid instead of hateful. Hateful to themselves and to those folks, and homophobic. Like, absolutely not. I do lose my ever-loving goddamn shit, but when I can pause and be grounded, I recognize I'm like, this is a wound that you inflicted upon yourself, and you allowed others to inflict upon you long before you ever tried to inflict it upon me.
Yes. I was just also going to talk about the clothing piece. Again, I feel like I'm not doing a good job of representing, like, how deep of an inner transition it has been for me. It has been an incredible inner transition. It has been like an emerging of an energy that I've always had within me. Blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about clothes. Let's talk about clothes. Let's talk about clothes. And it's literally, I mean, this just was happening a couple of months ago when I was going on my trip. I was still talking to you about this. I was boxed into tight clothing, and I happen to have slightly larger breasticles, and, like, having to, like, put them on display or figure out what to do with them or whatever. I think I do have a little bit of body dysmorphia now that I've kind of, like, come to terms with being gender fluid. I'm like, oh, I actually do have it a little bit up here. But again, it's not a defining aspect of my gender identity. That being said, so boxed in. And I think back to... and still now, I'm still figuring out how I present outwardly. That is one of the deepest, I know this sounds so weird and like a juxtaposition of like actual something being significant or not, but like one of the biggest wounds in me regarding my gender is the heartbreak that goes back to little Alia trying to fit themselves into like a mini skirt and a tube top and like high heels, because I was in so much pain looking in a mirror like that, but I thought that's what I needed to be. And I was always like, why don't I look right? Why don't I look right? This is what women are supposed to look like. Something is wrong. And now I'm like, yeah, it sounds so tiny. It's just clothes, but it is such a huge difference in my life.
So different, so similar though. Same. Like, I was a like scrawny, had no boobs, had no butt, and I would try and fit myself into these hyper feminized clothing. You were pushed to really make your boobs like front and center, and if you didn't have boobs, there was nothing to really play with. Like, I couldn't play, and it was such a insecurity thing for me. And now, like, redefining how I step into my femininity, how I step into my womanness, whether I identify as a woman or not, but like what I associate with like the feeling of womanness, the feeling of femininity and sexuality and stuff like that. I love my boobs.
You should get just
keep. I've always wanted to. The things that I've heard about getting your nipples pierced.
I know. I've heard that, like, because I used to want to too. I've heard that it's like over a year healing process for some people.
And it can get reinfected so quickly, and like sometimes you lose the sensitivity in your nipples.
You should buy the fake ones.
I've wanted to.
They're like the little hoop that you stick on top of the nipple.
There's also magnetic ones that the magnets are really strong, and so they just pinch around the nipple and it doesn't actually hurt.
I feel like you could rock.
Yeah, I would love that. 100%. Yeah, I find that like it doesn't make me feel objectified because I don't allow it. I feel empowered.
I love that.
In showing off like my breasts without a bra, there's something empowering about it because I feel like I am breaking the rules, and I'm again choosing my way of being feminine, choosing my expression and how to love my body out loud. And yeah, I just love it. I hate mini skirts. I love how angrily I said. Yeah, it's like I'm every once in a while can wear one of them, but like I'm still not feeling great about it. And like the
Do you know what's
Like
wild?
touching?
Yeah. I have fully accepted, like, I've always wanted to, because in theory I love the way that they look. I love when I see them on other people. I'm like, God, you look so good and whatever. It is only in the last, like, maybe year that I've fully been like, never again. I'm never buying another skirt again. I'm never buying another dress again unless it has built-in shorts, because, and I'm not saying just like, oh, the comfort of, like, my legs. I'm saying, like, the shorts need to be somewhat visible, because as much as I love seeing it, it makes my skin crawl when I put myself in it. And like that's the feeling that I'm talking about, like that little Alia being like, I see someone in a dress or a skirt and I'm like, you look so free and flowy and beautiful, and then I put myself in it and I'm like,
I hate the way this feels.
I hate the way this feels.
You know what? Like, unfortunately, to quote Justin Bieber, like, you know, maybe never say never. There could,
never. Sorry.
But yeah, maybe there might come a day. Never. Yeah, there might come a day when you're like, give me that flowy fucking something.
Maybe.
Floor length, flowy.
Maybe. That is very possible.
And
but it's
not,
also...
that's also totally cool.
Yes. But I know, I mean, I hope one day, because I love the way they look so much when I see other people. And there are certain styles that I love. Like, I love certain styles of skirts and dresses. But I will also say, in finally accepting that I'm never say never, but like, currently in the short term, in this reality, never going to force myself into a skirt or a dress in a certain type. I have certain dresses, by the way, in my closet that I do love and I will continue to try to wear. But I'm never going to force myself into a skirt ever again in this reality, and it might change in an hour.
Your wording right there is very key. You're never going to force yourself into a dress.
Yes. And in choosing to not force myself into a dress or a skirt these days, it does feel like I've been coming up to this moment for 20-80 years. It feels like I'm validating little.
Did you say 20-80?
28 years.
Okay, you definitely sounded like, roll that clip back.
20-80 years.
Did you say 20-80 years? I'm like, it's 20-80.
Yeah, no.
50 years has gone by.
Yeah, it feels like I'm validating. I'm holding like little Alia, who felt so even little. Like when my mom would put me in dresses under the age of 10, I would look in the mirror and be like, something's wrong. Like this is how old this feeling is in me. Like, it's just, I feel like I'm honoring her of just being like, I got you.
Yeah, hard
We're
pass.
not doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. Last thing on that topic, this is literally just for the audience. If there is any singular person out there who is on a gender journey or a sexuality journey or a whatever kind of journey, there is a video that I watched that I literally have saved on my camera roll. Like, I never take it off my phone because I rewatch it so often. I sent it to Chany as well. It's this person on the internet talking about how you can't misgender them. And they're talking about, like, what it feels to feel secure within their gender identity and how they navigate other people maybe not recognizing their gender identity. And it is literally was one of the crucial, most pivotal moments in my gender acceptance. And I'm just going to put it in the comments. I literally have it saved on my phone. I'm going to put it in the comments. And if anyone wants to watch this beautiful human being talk about one of the most beautiful gender messages I've ever seen in my life, it's in the comment. In the description.
I will say that's my ideal. There are definitely moments where I'm like,
No, but that's different. You know, like, it's not to say that you can't misgender someone. It's to say that they are like, well, here's how I'm going to take the misgendering. But that's very valid.
Like, my partner was on the phone with a family member recently, and it wasn't done in malice. It was just done in, like,
non-thinking.
Yeah, but it happened again and again and again. They kept using she, and I every time they'd say it, I whisper, hey. And this family member was on speakerphone, so they couldn't hear me, but I said, hey. Hey. And what we didn't talk about is that people that love me and accept my queerness, even if they don't understand it, or accept my, I guess I'll say, like, transness or my gender nonconformity, even if they don't fully understand it, they have access to any pronoun that they'd like for me. Neopronoun, they, she, him, whatever it is. But in general, I go by they, them pronouns. And it was a big moment for me to decide that, because I realized that I was, like, keeping access to she, her pronouns as a way to both keep access to easiness for people that I don't think had earned it, and also not have to take it personally when they didn't put in the work.
Yeah. And
I realized that I'm worth more than that. And as much as it sucks when someone does not put in the work, I think, like, it is personal. It is personal for me to exist in your life and for you not to put in the work to try to practice, or at least practice correcting yourself. So I just had to accept that it wasn't feeling good. It wasn't coming from a place that honored me. I wasn't honoring myself. I was just trying to avoid.
I think you're people pleasing a little bit.
Yeah, I was for sure. And I think I was also trying to avoid the pain.
Yeah.
But I was just pushing it down, and I was still not feeling honored. I still was not feeling loved. And so I set that hard boundary.
Yeah.
And I think that was really important for me. That was really important for me in honoring myself, and then granting fluidity and openness and allowance for people to see me in all that I am, to the people that I trusted to see me in that way.
It's so true, because I remember when that moment happened for you, and it made me so happy, because I was like, not because it was something that I was waiting. I never thought about anything that you were talking about. It's not like I was waiting for it to happen. It was more just like once you put it into words, I was like, man, that's beautiful that like you reach this point where you're like, no, like people who I trust to get it are allowed to call me whatever they want. Like if I was to, hopefully, if I was to refer you as she, I don't think you would take that as like,
no, not at all.
Oh, what do you not think I'm non-binary or whatever?
No.
But when people who are in less or close relationship with you, with people who you can't trust to fully get it, like I think holding that boundary of just being like, nah, I know it's going to suck if someone misgenders me, but also like I'm going to hold you to the standard of having to recognize that this is who I am. I love that. And I think it's a very like authentic to yourself kind of thing. And it does suck when those people get it wrong.
Yeah, I think it's also like, if I'm going to be feeling uncomfortable, I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you hide behind one of my pronouns. It's now like I feel uncomfortable when you use that because I know it's not coming from this place of loving and seeing all that I am. So I'm just going to be like, it's they.
Did you see when we went out with a friend of mine, the two of us went out with a friend of mine, and at the very end, because they don't get it, like even for myself.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, right at the end, because they don't get that stuff. They respect it. I think I run into this a lot with like the people in my life or the people on the street or whoever the fuck it is. A lot of people respect it, but they don't get it, which is a very valid thing. As long as you're being respectful,
yeah,
it is what it is. But this person really doesn't get it as respectful as they try to be, and so they're not going to be as mindful as the next person. So like I think they've done a really good job by just not using any pronouns, just like directly talking to you or whatever. And right at the end, they started saying she, and I don't know if you caught it, but they would be like, blah, 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 and she, and we're all standing at the table, and I would go, they? And even they didn't hear it, and they were like, blah, 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 she, and I was like, they? And they kept not hearing it, and I was like, okay, I give up. I was like, I tried 3 times. It's just, we're going to move past this part of the conversation.
I appreciate that, dude. It's also really nice when you don't have to be the one to be like, it's they.
No, fuck that.
Because I hate having to do that, but at the same time, I'm not going to keep allowing you to avoid seeing all of me. And there are people that I have in my life, not by choice, although I guess everyone's by choice, but like through relationships and stuff like that, and through particular choices that then result in these folks hanging about, that I am going to need to do that work and have had to do that work. And like, you know, we just named it. I was, you know, speakerphone with my partner, a family member of ours, and kept using she, and I was like, hey. But, you know, I think it also, I just need to be able to pick and choose when I'm going to do that work, because, like, it's exhausting.
If you are someone who...
But also, no matter what, you're going to be in the wrong. If you do not have my, like, explicit permission to use whatever pronouns you want...
You're going to get corrected.
You're wrong. You're in the wrong. You're using the wrong pronouns. You're not acknowledging me.
Yeah. 100%.
You have to get explicit permission. We should have had a conversation about it. If we have not had that conversation, that's not extended to you.
Yeah.
If you make the mistake in front of me and correct yourself, or someone is corrected for you, like if Alia corrects you,
and you're like, oh my
shit,
God,
my bad, da-da-da, or like...
As long as there's perceived effort to respect who you are.
And acknowledgement.
Yeah, and
like,
acknowledgement.
Acknowledge. Don't be like, okay, like you do that, right. I'm going to let Alia keep correcting you, and I'm going to get more and more uncomfortable looking. And I can have patience as long as you keep getting on the freaking bike.
Yeah, you keep trying, and you keep trying to respect and acknowledge.
But people who, like, walk next to the bike, they're like, I guess
I'm not going to do that.
I'm about to be like, I do not have time and energy for you, and I'm not going to keep, like, pretending like you aren't doing something shitty when you are doing something shitty.
Love my womanhood, blah, blah. I even feel a little bit funny when I refer to myself as she, or when I hear someone else call me she. Every now and then, it's not constant, but it's just like a little bit of like, it's that acknowledgement piece where I'm like, do you know? Or like, I think to myself, like, am I honoring my they them pronouns enough that I am validating myself in my gender fluidity? And it's interesting. I almost want to throw he in there just so that people will like mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I kind of been thinking about it. I'm
Oh
like,
my God,
I kind of want to
really?
be she, they, he.
I kind of want to be they, he, she. She's the last resort.
I love it.
Right.
But yeah, I wanted to say that if you are someone who feels emotionally activated at being misgendered, maybe more than we're expressing, like that's all valid too. Like it's
oh yeah,
it's
how you be.
How you be is how you be.
Yeah, exactly. It's good enough. It's good enough.
It's good enough. If you feel like strongly about certain things, if you feel more apathetic about certain things, like it just is how it is.
We're not trying to say that any type of way of being queer, transgender,
is the right way.
Absolutely not. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Maybe we have some questions. So, my cousin, who is currently in Guyana, he asked us last week what our favorite Pokemon was. This is on my personal one. And this week he has an insane question for us. So what's your favorite Pokemon?
So this is so hard because I have one that I can't think of the name of right now. But oh my god, nerd! Don't ask me about video games. I'm literally like, I mean, it's a whole episode on this. No, so I only got into Pokemon recently, in the last couple of years, and I think my favorite is Mareep, which is a little sheepy guy, except I hate its final form.
Oh, you have a big yawn. So does Gizmo. Gizmo hates its final form. Well, I need to tell everybody that I was not a Pokemon kid, though my brother took me to a Pokemon movie quite early on, and I did really enjoy Pikachu. It's a weird fucking noise. Everything's fine. Diddy's like
the guard dog of the life.
I was not very much a Pokemon kid. I did obviously love Pikachu, but that's, I think, kind of like a sellout move. Pika! Yeah, I was very much a Digimon / Monster Rancher. I really liked that. I didn't like Yu-Gi-Oh, but not because Yu-Gi-Oh wasn't good. I just didn't watch it that much. So yeah, those are my shows. Digimon because also their evolutions were great. They turned into fucking angel people.
Yeah.
Like, two of my favorite Digimons turned into angel people.
This is my absolute favorite Pokemon of all time. I forgot to mention it. It's been every single game that I've ever played is my favorite. Mind you, I only started playing Pokemon like 3 years ago, so I'm talking Shroomish.
That's cute.
You need to see it because it turns into the cutest thing. It's not actually Shroomish's first.
I'm giving my dog a massage.
It starts like the little angry shroom and it turns into a little
That's
dinosaur.
pretty cute. That actually looks eerily like Splice, though. I knew I would say it and it would just ruin that character for you.
That's my favorite Pokemon!
Y'all, if you haven't watched the movie Splice, don't. Alia hasn't even watched it, but just knows what the thing looks like.
Chany told me about this movie like fucking a year ago or some shit, and it sounds like the most horrific, fucked up, weird ass, not scary, but like weird ass, uncomfortable premise in the entire world. And somehow this dumb little bitch over here manages to bring it up every 3 months and ruin something by reminding me that Splice exists. And now you just ruined my favorite fucking Pokemon. Anyway, whatever. What did your cousin ask? What was the second part?
Okay, so again. So cute. I'm going to make sure I tag their comment in stories so that we can do it. And then I think we should close out because this little boy's whining like a bubba.
What the
asks? Talk about the political and economic state of the world.
Fucked.
Haven't we? Haven't we been talking about this whole fucking time?
Nah.
Through the lens of queerness, through the lens of what it's like to grow up queer and like,
we have not talked about the politics of it, but
I consider
not
things like that.
Politics.
Well, no, but everything is reflected in society.
But you know what he means.
Yeah, this is a lot,
I'm going to
really
go out on a limb and say that we have not touched any actual political discussions of like larger scheme country politics.
One thing that I can say without like
social politics maybe
is that you can probably get a sense of where our political, well, not maybe analysis, but our political views align with. If not, like to name it overtly, like I am incredibly radical and leftist. I believe that we need to take things further. And so in that case, like I think it's a really sad time in our world. I think it's a really destructive, disheartening, oppressive, heartbreaking, inhumane time, both politically and economically. Like, people are struggling to survive. That's part of the reason, as stupid as it sounds, like, part of the reason we wanted to do this podcast was to, like, bring a little bit of light and joy in the world, and, like, in our worlds, and getting to watch these episodes back and think that we're hilarious and, like, blow smoke up our own asses, but also in being able to share it and hopefully, like, have people feel a little less alone in the things that they're going through who are like us. And who aren't, but think like us.
Yeah, or, like, not to bring it away from politics and economics.
Yeah.
So anyway, one of the reasons that I even wanted to do this episode was just because of that one fucking person's video that talked about, like, how their gender identity is an amalgamation of all of their energies, and that's why you can't misgender them. That video changed my fucking life. And so I wanted us to do this because I don't see, not that I don't see our perspective or our kind of similar narratives to, like, gender expression and gender exploration on the internet, but I don't feel like it's that prominent. I feel like more boxed in, more heteronormative versions of queerness are the narratives that are online.
And white
version
of queerness.
I didn't even want to go there, but that was also some feedback that I got from someone where they were like, I was looking into all this stuff and it was so heteronormative and boxy, and this person was like, are you looking at people of color talking about queerness? And I was like, no. And they were like, you should do that.
No, whiteness is an identity that hasn't existed for very long, and therefore the ancestral practices around whiteness do not go that deep at the end. And I'm not talking about white people.
Whiteness.
Roots deeper than whiteness. It's an article. Please Google it. I'm talking about the identity of whiteness. The identity of whiteness is not actually that old of an identity, but the identities of many cultures around the world are so old, and therefore their, like, experiences and their understandings of queerness and transness
and their lovingness and their acceptance of difference,
so rich and deep and luscious. Again, I'm going to use that word, which might freak people out, but, like, luscious. But yeah, that's what, you know, like, you eat a candy and you're like, oh fuck. And that's the queerness I think that we need to hear more about. That we need the one that allows you to be, the one that stops trying to dictate how you need to move and where you need to go. The one that lets you be on this journey the way that you individually and we collectively want to be doing.
Yes. And so I just think that while I'm not discounting any kind of queer experience or non-queer experience. How you feel is how you feel. If you feel it as black and white, you feel it as black and white. I didn't feel like that was helpful for me. Chany's making out with their dog, but they didn't think it was helpful for me. Just kidding, they're loving on them. They didn't think it was helpful for them, and so that's part of the reason I just felt so strongly about doing this episode, because I was like, I just know there's someone out there who might watch this and be like, oh damn, maybe I have feelings about my own thing. And not to say they feel the same way as us, but just to provide less rigid, oppressive perspectives.
Liberatory ways of thinking about this thing. That said, we haven't even touched on the spirituality aspect of it, which is a huge aspect of my non-binariness, so I can speak to that. But these boys need our attention. They want to be loved. You might have been hearing Gizmo very patiently and quietly whining, but in this, like, whisper octave. And, you know, I think it's time. I think we've been talking for a while, and as much as I love talking about queerness and transness and, you know,
gender expression and
and the way that we are other is it's so much fun, and at the same time, you know, like, I want to eat my fucking sandwich. So though we did it sort of quickly, we will endeavor to talk more about it at a later time.
And we're also going to do Manic, Pixie, Dreamgirl discussion, because that one's going to be so much fucking fun. I'm so excited.
Oh, yeah. And can we talk, I want to dive into, like, how we were.
Oh, yeah.
That's the limitations of it.
Stay tuned, because Chany and I were both perceived as, again, Chany and I are the same thing in different fonts, constantly. Non-binary, gender fluid, but same lived experiences, also coming from completely different places. Same thing with our love for, like, TV and film, completely different places, meets in the middle, music, whatever. we were both perceived as Manic, Pixie, Dreamgirls in very different ways as younger folks, and have now turned into neurodivergent, mentally ill queer people. So we just have a lot to say about it, and it's going to be real fun.
Oh, God, yeah. We just got to get into a discussion about it. If there's anything else you want to hear us talk about, please let us know. Comment, write us on Instagram, anywhere else, subscribe.
Follow us on Instagram at Secretly Freaking Out. Subscribe to our channel, which is at Secretly Freaking Out. We post a lot of cute, like, kind of short clips on Instagram. I'm thinking about making us a TikTok even. We shall see.
I would do it.
It wouldn't be that hard because I would just upload the exact same things from Instagram onto TikTok.
Yeah.
So
it's super easy, and we might get, like, some traction over there.
Maybe follow us on TikTok. If it exists, it'll be in the description. Anyway.
That said, I hope you all have a good night. It is nighttime or evening time here. Don't forget to eat. Don't forget to drink some water. And sleep. And we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, thanks for spending your afternoon with us, or morning, or night, or middle of the day.
Your time.
Your time. Thank you for your time. Goodbye, good sirs and madams and non-binary people.